Hey, what's up, everyone? Michael Beller and Jake Ciely here with you from the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We are deep into August. Fantasy football draft season is here. We're helping you get ready by taking a look at some of the most polarizing players who you're going to see go at the top of drafts. And Jake, in this one, I want to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, let's put 2020 to bed. He was a disappointment given where he got pushed to. That is a fact. This was someone who was being taken in the middle of first rounds. He was being taken alongside Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry. And if you had those expectations for him, you likely feel let down. But let's also be realistic about the season he put up. 803 yards on the ground, 297 yards through the air on 36 catches, 5 touchdowns. That's 1,100 yards on the dot from scrimmage with those 5 scores on 217 touches. That is a hell of a rookie season that people would be very excited about had he not been pushed into the first round after Damian Williams opted out in 2020. So let's spin things forward to 2021. How are you viewing him? Where are you viewing him among his running back brethren?
As one of the best bounce back candidates, last year's trash, whatever you want to call it.
Bounce back candidates, right?
Yeah, on the athletic site, I was dumpster dive from last year, and I have 11 players, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was one of the ones that I have pegged for this article the entire time because you mentioned it. It wasn't that Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a poor rookie season by rookie standards, by running back standards. He was an RB2. And actually, before Le'Veon Bell showed up, he was top 15 pushing the RB1 tier, which is where he should have been going. And you mentioned it. Last year, he got pushed up because Damian Williams opted out, and everybody went nuts. It was like, hey, the running back for the Chiefs, we know what the running back for the Chiefs can do. Let's push him into the middle of the first round. So by putting up RB2 performance, that's a massive quote-unquote disappointment. So now we head into 2021, and he's one of the best values because he's still not going near the top RB1 or RB1 tier. He's still barely inside the top 20 right now. He's down in the low teens. And it's because people get burned and then they don't want to go back to somebody. All they remember is, oh, I took this guy and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. And now I'm never drafting him again because he ruined my team last year. Well, no, you ruined your team by putting him in the first round. So if you're going to take him in the teens, let's talk about what made people excited for the Chiefs. Is that it was the Jamal Charles argument. It was the running back for the Chiefs doesn't need to touch the ball 20 times a game because you can give him 14 to 18, and that's perfect. And that's where Edwards-Helaire fits in. 14 to 18 touches a game, perfect. I don't want him trying to carry the ball 20-plus times a game. So if you look at Edwards-Helaire for this season, he can easily hit that RB1 tier on the low end, but he'll hit that RB1 tier because there is no Damian Williams. Le'Veon Bell's thankfully not around. And Darrell Williams is the backup with Darwin Thompson and a few others. They're talking about Jerick McKinnon in the passing game possibly. But the fact is now the talent gap is even a little bit more than it was last year. And Darrell Williams, while being one of the best backup running backs you can draft later in drafts, isn't going to take so much away from Edwards-Helaire that he can't be it, especially if he sees a little bit of an uptick in the passing game, which is really what we expect.
At the start of training camp, I went through with all of our beat writers here at The Athletic and did a beat writer roundtable series. We grouped them together by division. Those are evergreen episodes. You can definitely check those out. But what I'm getting at here is that in talking to Nate Taylor, our Chiefs beat writer, I put the question to him like this. I said, let's just say a world where Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets 75% of the backfield touches and everyone else gets something like 25%. Is that realistic? And he sort of laughed and said, if that doesn't happen, something has gone horribly wrong in the Chiefs offense. Is that somewhere where you're at, also somewhere similar in your projections in terms of backfield workload for these guys?
Yes and no. I mean, if we're talking 75% of the snaps, I mean, I could see it. Touches, I still think that's a little bit aggressive. And not saying anything against Taylor, it's just, I'm looking at his projections that I have right now. I have for 250 touches, and that's a really nice number. Those 250 touches also gets him to 1,300 yards and right around the 8-9 touchdown range. I don't think he needs more than that, and that's with, I'm looking to kind of give an estimation. It's around 100 and 105 targets for Darrell Williams, around 50 for Jerick McKinnon, and then a few sprinkled in for Darwin Thompson and Burton and all the other guys that are further down the list. But just Williams and McKinnon alone, well, you can do the simple math, 250 and 150, that's not 75%. But Edwards will be out there a lot, even with those 100 to 150 touches going to Williams and McKinnon. You don't need Edwards. Like I go back to the main point. You don't need Edwards-Helaire to be a 20-plus guy touch-wise every single week. So I would love it. Honestly, if he got the 75%, actually, let me flip this back to you real quick, Michael Beller, do you know how many running backs usually hit 70+% of the touches every single year? I'll just answer the question for you because, I was going to say, it's actually around 5 or 6. You don't even get to 10. There was one that was at 90%, and then there was 2 inside 80%. So if you said 75% for Edwards-Helaire, let's say that number is correct. Then honestly, Edwards-Helaire is finishing probably top 5.
And I think that ceiling exists for him. And you look at what you said, right?
Sure.
You say you have him for 250 touches across 17 games if we just give him every single game played, and maybe you bump him down a game or whatever in your projections. But last year he had the 217 touches and 13 games played. So that's basically tracking with exactly where he was last season. So I think there is some room to build in an uptick in touches and touches per game for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When we look at this team as a whole, we know that Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, they're going to have, monster roles in the offense. And when we just divide up the entire offensive pie for this Kansas City team, we have to leave huge pieces for those two guys. Edwards-Helaire right there alongside them. Does the way that Tyreek and Kelce operate in this offense have anything to do with Edwards-Helaire for you, or the way you look at him this season?
Not so much in the fact that, this is... It does and it doesn't. I hate to kind of answer it that way again, but to explain it, it's similar to the Titans and why I don't want the third pass catcher. So where it's not the same as that, we've had years past where we made the argument about whether or not Jonnu Smith, and then this year Josh Reynolds before Julio showed up was why Josh Reynolds was intriguing, but now Josh Reynolds is dead for fantasy purposes. And I bring them up to say Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are 1 and 2. Forever. They're never, unless one of them's hurt, they are forever in 1 and 2. So now it comes, can Edwards-Helaire be the third passing game option, or is it going to be Hardman, or is it going to be Byron Pringle, who got some late off-season buzz, but also late season buzz last year, or Demarcus Robinson is still going to get his. So maybe Edwards-Helaire contends with whatever wide receiver steps up as the third, but I think it's almost going to be more of they tied for 4th to split the 3rd and 4th than really is the clear third. So yes, it comes into play, but it's not because of Hill and Kelce. It's more because we're talking about the third option. So, I'm looking right now. I have 64 targets for him. I have Mecole Hardman getting 92. So he's officially 4th, and then that puts him just barely ahead of Robinson and Pringle. So that's why I go back to that 75% again, because if you told me he could get 80 to 90 targets, first of all, that'd be a major shift in their offense to throw that much to the running back, and I don't know that Patrick Mahomes is going to do that. But the 4th best pass catcher on this team, I'm okay with. But it's more about the third option being Mecole Hardman, and more so than it has to do with Hill and Kelce. So that's why I said yes and no at the same time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that adds up, and this is definitely an offense to invest in. Edwards-Helaire gives you the last chance to do it, really, before the back part of drafts when you start talking about some of those other receivers.
Well, positively, if Hardman bombs and falls on his face and doesn't take a step forward, although the reports have been positive so far, but
very
he
positive,
doesn't.
yes.
Pringle doesn't step up. Robinson is just Robinson, and all of a sudden, those 90 targets for Mecole Hardman are actually going to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We go back to the discussion we had earlier in this video. Now he's a potential top 5 running back.
I think that top 5 ceiling definitely exists for him. We could see him be the Kareem Hunt for this offense this season in a perfect world. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, because I'm RB14 on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You're in the same range, RB16. So we wrap it up with this, Jake. You're sitting there, you're having a draft. At what point in the swing of things does Clyde Edwards-Helaire enter your mind?
So everybody we've been talking about over this course of these video series that we've been doing, the 3rd round, if you want to check the other 2 videos, 3rd round. But this one, unlike the other 2 that we did in our series, the Edwards-Helaire I'm getting in the 3rd round. And mostly because I go back to the article I referenced at the beginning, is there's a lot of people that won't forgive him. And this is where you get value. You find that, no matter how many times you and I tell people, everybody else out there, don't be bitter beer face. Remember that commercial? Don't be a bitter beer face of players. There's still plenty of people who are too angry. And unlike the CeeDee Lamb conversation that we had, they're not putting him in the 2nd round because they just won't. I can't see how he's an RB1 after everything that happened last year. Well, we've talked about it many times, said the top 5 upside is there, but after the RB1s, because his workload isn't as guaranteed as some of those. So round 3, even early, put it this way, if I'm drafting early round 3, I'm probably rolling the dice because by the end of round 4, he's not going to be there. So sometimes you don't want to overpay for quote unquote your guy, but you also understand how the draft is going to play out, because if you don't take him at the beginning of the 3rd round, there's no way you're getting Edwards-Helaire. So early 3rd round, I have no problem with.